and the business administration guests are here. Professor K.K. Agarwal, Chairman, National Board of Accreditation. Dr. B.G. Sangameshwara, former Vice Chancellor, JSS Science and Technology University. Mr. Jayaprakash Gandhi, Founder, Chairman, Career Guidance. Dr. Gauri Ramachandran, Economist, Chairperson, Economic Affairs, Hindustan Chamber of Commerce. Dr. M.J. Xavier, Director, Loyola Business School and Founder Director of XLRI. Professor A.M. Nadarajan, Chief Executive of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology, and myself, Dr. M. Akila, Principal, KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology. We welcome you all today. This education is fundamental for achieving full human potential, developing an equitable and just society, and promoting national development. World is undergoing rapid changes in the knowledge landscape. With various dramatic scientific and technological advances, such as the rise in big data, AI, etc., many unskilled jobs worldwide may be taken over by machines. While the need for a skilled workforce, particularly involving mathematics, computer science, data science, in conjunction with multidisciplinary abilities across the sciences, social sciences, and humanities will be increasingly in demand. So the need for multidisciplinary learning is the need of the hour. That's why we are here today to discuss in this panel how the higher education reforms has been taken by India recently, and how it will help the higher education when we go through a transformation in school education. So I welcome Dr. A.M. Nadarajan sir to have the welcome address.
Welcome, sir. Vanakkam, all of you. I am very happy to see you all in this connection. It's a great event, very important event. National Education Policy released recently. And this policy, released after 34 years. 1986 was the first reform. And after that, with slight modifications. Now we are coming with a wonderful policy, which will be very, very useful to this country. This country is not a small one, very complex, very important in the world. We have to contribute something to this world. Our youth population is more than 40 crores, and we have to empower them. And we see that in future, in another 10 to 15 years, we will have a potential to exploit our human resources to all over the world. So national policy is a must. It is a very comprehensive, and it has come out very nicely. Now it is up to us how to implement, how to go about and harness that kind of a situation. We are very happy, sir. I am very, very happy to see Dr. Agarwal in spite of busy schedule, sir. As the chairman of NBA, you may be having a lot of things to do, and you may be participating in all these changes, reforms, and all that. In spite of that, I requested Mr. Hariharan, he has requested you to participate in that. I'm thankful to Hariharan, sir. Sir, very happy to meet you, sir. You've got a very vast experience, more than 40 years. You're involved in many things, and I know that you're a pro-vice chancellor, later vice chancellor in the university for more than 10 years. And you are involved in many such national activities. I know that you are a very, very busy person. I'm very happy, sir, to welcome you all in this situation, sir. Next, I welcome my friend, Dr. Sangameshwara. My friend, I know him the way he was contributing as an advisor in AICTE. Then nearly 25 years he has been with the JSS as a principal, then director, then vice chancellor, and so many capacities. He has helped a lot to bring that JSS Institute to a very high level, the university level. His contribution is something great. He is with us. And I have Gauri, Dr. Gauri, he is a finance advisor. She has got a lot of experience. I tell you, his contribution is something great, and he's an expert in economic affairs. And she has got her own consultancy service, DER, and she has presented a lot of, he's a speaker in all Tamil TV channels on economy and related affairs. We welcome Madam for this program. We are very happy to meet you on this occasion. I could get you through our Maradam chairman. Otherwise, yeah, Jay Chandran, he was responsible in bringing you into our line. I am very happy. Then we will have Xavier, Dr. Xavier. Very nice to meet you in this occasion. Yes, you were there in Karania. I know you at the time. Yes, you have got very vast experience. You have worked many institutions, very many institutions. And also you have 3 books you have written and you have worked in IIM Bangalore, all over the country and all over the world. You are known, you are here. We are very thankful to you, sir. And last but not the least, my friend, JP, how are you? Very nice to meet you. Yeah, he is well-known person in Tamil Nadu. He needs no introduction. Everybody knows in schools, colleges, universities, and he is connecting with everyone in Tamil Nadu. I know that. And every day he is meeting students, parents, management, and he is a very busy man in Tamil Nadu. He is connecting with everyone, particularly in technical education. Welcome you, JP, for joining this great program. So I request Dr. Aguilar to start and go ahead with our program. Thank you very much in joining with us. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for giving a wonderful welcome note to all the dignitaries today present in the panel discussion. And I have to say a few words about our Dr. A.M. Nadarajan, and he has greater than 50 years of educational experience from starting from teaching, research, and administration. And we are very grateful to have him here as the Chief Executive of our institute. And let us have the discussion now. And my first question goes to Dr. Agarwal, sir. What changes in education policy related to technology do you think are necessary to fully embrace its potential for learning?
Okay, my pleasure to be participating in this forum panel discussion arranged by this institution on higher education reforms. Now, coming to the question, what changes are required in technology for realizing the potential of reforms? Let me first of all tell you that this policy has very far-reaching consequences. First is that within a period of 10 to 15 years, we may get rid of the system of affiliation in this country. See, this system of affiliation, which was a legacy of the Oxford University, is prevalent only in some countries of South Asia. The whole world has disbanded it because this is a system which does not empower the institution. And once you are not empowered, you cannot really deliver what you wish to deliver. So I see this as a very great fundamental change which will happen, hopefully, that we will have all institutions owning their performance. Now, because a part of a university affiliated institution, you can have the freedom to disown even your negatives and pass it on to the university. And if you want to do something positive, you may not be allowed to do that. Second thing which is very important in this policy is that standalone institutions will not be encouraged anymore. Now, this property of establishing standalone institutions had a meaning when we wanted to give a flip to special elitist areas of education. We believed country needs technical education very strongly, so we established IITs and all that. Similarly for medical education, legal education, so on and so forth. But in this whole process, most of our good institutions became almost single discipline institutions. As chairman National Board of Accreditation, I also look after NIRF. And when I look to the first 10 slots in NIRF, 7 go to IITs, 1 goes to IISc Bangalore, and only 2 go to the general purpose universities. Now, this is not a very healthy sign for a developing nation with so much demography of youth with varying expectations. Uh, I am myself a technologist. Technology is very important, but that does not mean that languages are not important, arts and culture is not important, social sciences are not important, basic sciences are not important. So therefore, we created a class of institutions within the general gamut of universities and colleges, which ultimately is trying to prove counterproductive in some sense. I'll give you an example. When the knowledge expands, you always have to create. I was talking about interdisciplinarity. Say, for example, science as a subject, when it grew, we said, okay, let physics be a separate subject, chemistry be a separate subject, life sciences be a separate subject. Life sciences grew, we said, okay, let botany be separate, let zoology be separate, and so on and so forth. Unless we realized that we have done a wrong thing, and therefore we started coining subjects like physical chemistry, chemical physics, biophysics, biochemistry, biotechnology, because we did realize that unless we have combination of subjects being learned by students, the real problems of life cannot be solved. Even in engineering, we did say mechanical engineering separate, electronics separate, but then we had to invent mechatronics because we did feel that there are situations where mechanical and electronics has to go together. And today we feel all the more necessary for this: robotics, artificial intelligence, Internet of Things, drones, augmented reality, virtual reality, all cyber security, all these disciplines are multidisciplinary. Therefore, this consciously making sure that the institutions are not single discipline institutions will be a very great transformation. Engineers have to talk to the doctors to solve their problems. See, at the moment, what is happening is, once we made a survey, I think about 40 years ago, 50% equipment in hospitals were lying idle because there is no engineering background and no doctor wishes to touch an equipment. And ultimately, it was discovered out of those 50% equipment, about 40% just because a fuse is not working. So point is that there must be on multiple facilities on the campus, multiple knowledge directions to the student, and then only we can go ahead. Talking about technology, I'm so happy that the teachers of this country, whether at the school level or at the college level or at the university level, have really done a wonderful job during this COVID period. We, as a matter of fact, we never expected that our teachers will be able to change so soon and will be able to deliver the knowledge to the students' homes reasonably well. I'm using the word reasonably because they were never trained for this. But this brings us that we have to be prepared for better use of technology for online education. I'm not saying that we will have to stay with online education, but we will have to partially stay with online education. Now, even when your colleges reopen, universities reopen, for the first few months at least, you will not be able to have all the students on the campus on a single day because of social distancing and all that. Therefore, some course will have to be delivered online, even if the colleges and the universities reopen. Therefore, this medium of transmission will have to be strengthened, number one. Number two, add-on knowledge can definitely be given using online. For example, if a student of engineering is interested to take 2 courses in music, now it is allowed. It should be allowed. But then as an engineering institution, you may not have facilities for teaching music. But then he can take those courses online on a Saturday, Sunday, but you will give credit for that. So technology for online education, for online assessment will have to be strengthened. We will have to create more classroom-like environment where the students can interact even in online. So I believe more work on indigenous use of technology in a much better fashion. Let me reiterate, it has been done pretty well, but still we need much better delivery mechanisms, much better interactive mechanism, and much better assessment mechanisms, which we are still questioning in the online education. So that's the direction of technology which has to take in the coming few months. And the whole philosophy of our technical education will become multidisciplinary. We will have to feel pride in the fact that we as engineers are serving the society. We are serving the doctors, we are serving the lawyers, we are serving the agriculture. I think with that philosophy, we'll have to move on from now onwards. That I think is the biggest take from this new education policy. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, sir. It was a wonderful answer to the question. If anybody can add to the flavor of what Professor Agarwal has said, JP, sir, please add.
Yes, sir. First of all, I really agree with Agarwal, sir, because the affiliation process will take 10 to 15 years. My request is we need to fine tune so that we should give more autonomy to the technical institutions to start with right now till we achieve that of no affiliation process, affiliation to the universities. Right now, we have to give more. And also, sir, being a part of NIRF, I would definitely suggest you, instead of restricting only top 200 institutions, we should go step by step. Next year, at least 250, then 300, 350, so that everybody knows. The students should know the best. We are only know only the top 200, because now at least we should identify the 500 top institutions in technical, in medical, and all this. So it will great help for us, people like us, when we guide students. So that's the part we really would like to tell you that we need to fine tune. Next is, I really agree, interdisciplinary learning is going to be a big part of it hereafter. Why not we all the institutions with Agarwal sir's experience, why not you suggest a government to start a national technology portal where the latest technology can be updated at every minute, so that the people and the institutions can update. For example, today everybody is talking about artificial intelligence, latest GPT-3, that going to change entire artificial intelligence module. I don't know how many of you have gone through that. Every day we are getting lot of materials in Google related how this is going to change the entire, even the education system, the GPT-3. So why not we have some portal to tell all this? Because very difficult for the teachers, because you rightly said our teachers are really equipped, are doing very well. So I wish that somebody can come forward, or some institution can start something like that. It will be a great help for a thing. And one more thing I would like to tell, sir, in case we would like the India's to grow, in national education policy, 100 universities can come in starting campus here. In fact, I'll be very happy if somebody throws light whether how it's going to affect or improve. Maybe yes, it is going to, brain drain will come down. But I feel that our Indian institutions are equally are good. Why, if in case government wants to allow the foreign universities here, they should be allowed, each university should be allowed only for one particular, one university for science, one university for engineering, one university for medical. In that way, we need to start with. So these are the few things we really suggest. Fine tune the national education policy, which is amazingly good, both school education, college education wise. These are the few things. Maybe other people can throw more light. It will be a great help.
Yeah, thank you, JP sir. And Changameshwar sir, can you add something on this?
Two things. One is Dr. Agarwal ji has covered everything in the NEP 2020. We may not have much to say because he is extensively covered and very specific and crisp. There are 2-3 points which will come out of this. Is how do you merge the vocational and the regular education? Because most of them have a little knowledge on the vocational education to merge with the regular education. And then there are a lot of takeaways from this policy. One is I entirely agree with him with my experience of becoming an autonomous college in 2007. And we are able to do very well, and because of the freedom given to the faculty in the curriculum design and so many ways, and interacting with the industry, etc., and all this. So it is a very essential. However, 2 points are in my mind for Agarwal ji and to other panelists. One is there is a mention in the NEP 2020 that the public-private participation in a higher education institution. So this is very essential, but it is not elaborated in detail. Of course, it may come in the days to come. because you see, the professionals like us, if we want to run an institution, we are in trouble because we don't have resources. So we need to have kind of a support from the government. As you see, we are purely a government institution. Again, it is governed by too many people and it is not going to be very comfortable. So public-private participation is a very, very important factor. So this has to be given. So I have some idea because there is economics also. But when I was in AICT, we thought over of a bank called Education Development Bank, like IDBI, Industrial Development Bank, a bank which supports a lot of education enterprises. So we need to have, there are a lot of enterprises, but they are not professional most of the time, currently what we have. So it is essential for all of us to have a kind of a financial support or a mechanism should be available. The next point which I am interested in, the polytechnic education in the country, which has got a large number of institutions, is a very big and diploma given. And there is only one small mention in 17.5 of the NEP 2020, whether it is going, earlier we have not treated polytechnic as a higher education institution. And now we can treat them as a higher education. In such occasion, how we manage the diploma colleges is to, like in UK, they are converted all into universities, polytechnics as universities. Whether we have to take a stand of converting this to a large number of institutions for higher education. And this is the very serious matter that has to be looked into. How it will take place is not very clear. Coming to Dr. Gandhi's presentation that we should have a foreign university only in the specific areas like medical engineering as mentioned, but that will defeat our NEP because NEP is only multidisciplinary. So we need to have a multidisciplinary institute. Even in the countries like US, the universities will not be ready to come with for a specific area to be taught here in India. But it is necessary for us to have some foreign universities in the country for the sake of competition. We will have a very big competition, and that might make all of us into a very good institution, and it is necessary for all of us. That is one part. Another is what the implementation of this NEP 2020. We need to have a serious thought and a document, and then only we can go ahead with this. So we need to have a lot of exercise to be done at the government level for the implementation of all this. So with this, I'll for commenting on the speakers which made this. Any answers?
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
sir.
you.
See, you have mentioned many points which will be taken care of. And now I request Xavier, sir. See how this reforms will help us to have a good industry relations. Academia and industry is no more different. So whatever we create goes to the industry. So what will be the impact of NEP when it comes to industry relations with academia?
Thank you. A small correction about my background. I was founding director of IIM Ranchi, not XLRI, so people should not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I have taught in XLRI, so while I was there, a lot of people used to ask me whether it is my institute. So because of my name, Xavier, so you are not at fault. Yeah. All right. So this, for getting into the industry issue itself, I think as a policy, you cannot ask for anything better. So it allows for tremendous amount of flexibility at the higher education level. And, that entry exit options, that's a brilliant idea. And then it is really talking about this multidisciplinary, because today every problem that comes up is a multidisciplinary problem. And then this removing of these kind of, what do you call this, hard separations. That is a beautiful idea. So there's no difference between vocational regular education, your extracurricular. So you can earn credits through many different ways, right? So it basically offers a tremendous flexibility. And another thing that was not mentioned by anyone is this emphasis on formative assessment. So I think, we have this continuous assessment, but invariably the final exam plays a major role. You gave a lot of weightage for that, the summative assessment. So now you have to give a lot more weightage to this formative assessment. So continuous assessment will happen. So these are actually pretty good uh, ideas that could be used by institutions to, for example, bring in your industry institute interactions. Say, for example, nobody will stop you from spending 6 months in an industry and getting credits for that. So today, the curriculum has become extremely flexible. So you work for 2 years, you study in a college, 2 years you go and work in a company, but at that time you take online courses, you can earn credits. See, that way, the policy has given us tremendous flexibility. Now, how do we implement this? One is our rights. That is one part of it. The second part of it is how they regulate. Now, in the spirit in which this policy has been written, should be implemented. You have this Higher Education Regulatory Council. Right? This is going to supersede your AICTE, UGC, and others. Now the question is, how is it going to ultimately function? So most of the time, the councils, let me play the devil's advocate. When they come in with good intentions. You look at the UGC's objectives. You look at AICTE's objections. Any of the regulators, they come in. Can I come, please? Yeah. Yeah. So the problem basically is how it gets ultimately implemented. So if they give us that flexibility, then of course, it will really do human service. It will give a lot of good for everybody. One last point I want to add, this 4-year undergraduate course, this may not be immediately relevant for engineering colleges because you always do 4-year course. Now, maybe we should have made it compulsory for everyone to make it a 4-year undergraduate. They are also allowing for 5-year integrated masters. So these were all long pending kind of demands. So today it is possible for us to offer any kind of a course. And then straight away you can go for your master's. After 4-year research course, you can go for your PhD. There's plenty of flexibility that has been actually built into this. Now, if this 4-year undergraduate, for example, is going to change the landscape. Number of colleges will now jump into this 4-year course. Because if you don't do a 4-year course, you will be out of the market. That's what will happen. So your BCA will become a 4-year course. Your BBA will become a 4-year course. BCom will become a 4-year course. Then what will happen is for companies also, to recruit students, it will become easier. All are comparable. A BBA or a BTech. So it's a technical training, is a commercial training, is a management training. So like that, it's going to give you tremendous flexibility. So in the one fallout is going to be MBAs may go down. You don't need to go for MBA straight away. So right now, for example, MBA is an entry kind of a qualification to get a managerial position. If you change to a 4-year BBA, most of the corporates will start recruiting BBAs where they are currently recruiting MBAs. If that happens, then MBA will have to be really, a lot more focused and only for experienced people. That's a kind of a change I anticipate in this. As and when more issues come up, I would be happy to answer. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Dr. Gauri, will you be able to add something to what Xavier sir has given?
Yeah. Your question was about grooming the industry academia bridging. As far as this new NEP, as well as even in the existing stream, Chamber of Commerce plays a very important role in bridging the academia industry connect. The reason is the industry body as a Chamber of Commerce, we have around thousands of industrial bodies, industry persons as a member of our Chamber of Commerce. So what we do is we take the students on a short-term internship to the, I mean, it can be called as any kind of a grooming. We put them on to the attachment to the industry per se. They will learn all those things, whatever that is required virtually from, you know, finance to HR to everything at the industry level. And we, at the end of it, you know, value them and certify them and give them the, you know, needed thing for them. They have just not for a project they have done. It is really they have grown them, and they'll be setting up their own entrepreneurship. So the development and here the vocational or whatever you just call it, the Chamber of Commerce plays a very pivotal role in terms of molding a student's education, especially in terms of this practical education, whatever they learn in the college as a theory and the little amount of your guest lectures. The real practical thing comes when they come to the Chamber of Commerce and get the, we assign it to three, you know, industrialists, where the factory running is seen, and right from the time how they make the funding to stock management to the production sale and everything in today's digital marketing also being covered into there. The time, how much they allot with us speaks about their learning at the end of it. So that's one of the good service we provided to them. And at the end of it, depending upon the you know, institution requirement, certificate is also being given. Now this has to be beyond certificate, beyond internship. The real thing they have to set up. So we groom them from concept to completion, how they can set up their own startup. So that grooming happens at the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Next question I put up with JP sir. What is that one thing that colleges and schools must do to upskill their faculty ready for the NEP 2020?
No, definitely. See, they have to update. If you're not updating, you are outdated. So the faculty should be at the race with the, that's why I told you, why not we start some technology portal where they can keep updating. NPTEL is definitely, looks like mandatory, because I know even your institution is making mandatory to make sure that faculty has to clear and all this. So they have to really get updated. There are many portals like Coursera, Udacity, Udemy. There are so many things again. So one thing the institution should make sure that they should give some leverage for them to learn. The faculty should learn and deliver to the students. That's going to be their ultimate. So it's not only for the students, even the faculty has to keep updating, learn and deliver. In school education, it is okay, but in school education, I feel that the more reforms has to be brought in the examination system itself. See, now we are from 10 plus 2, we are now shifting to 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus, 5 plus 3 plus 3, 4. So that in that national education policy, they said they might be having exams for 3rd standard, 5th standard, 8th standard. That is something really, I feel that maybe in the urban side CBSE, but the rural side is going to affect our thing. So why not let's have evaluation. In 3rd standard, we should have evaluation whether the child is having learning ability or not. We should have that evaluation. In 5th standard, they should have evaluation on aptitude skills, whether they're able to learn mathematics or very well. In 8th standard, the basic concepts of science and mathematics should be tested. Then only they can have the public board exams. So these are the few things they can really look into it. So and teachers has to really, because see why the Tamil Nadu State Board marks has come down, the CBSE, see, the problem is the new syllabus. These teachers are still are really able to deliver the way the people wanted. So it takes time. So I will not blame the, but they have done it very well. Out of all the circumstances, after a long time, the Tamil Nadu board has really retuned to the level of CBSE and NCERT syllabus. So it takes time. So we need more organizations, higher education institutions should come forward to make sure that they update the skill of the teachers. Upgrading the skill of the teachers is very necessary. That's why even national education policy at one line they have said, even teachers has to be upgraded. How the institutions are graded, teachers also has to be graded, whether it's a school. So that's all in a good move. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Agarwal sir, can you say something in that, the upgradation, upskilling the faculty?
Yeah, certainly. The point is the new era of delivery of education is obviously going to be very flexible in the sense that, first of all, as I told you, the student will have the option, whether we give it today or we give it after a year, we'll have to give him or her the option to study courses of his or her choice. As a matter of fact, we say now, after Industry 4.0, in Education 4.0, a student should be able to design his or her own degree. He may come to you, yes, I want BTech Mechanical Engineering, but I don't want all the 40 subjects which you have. I want these 40. So 30 may agree, 10 may not agree. Now, if that be so, there has to be a freedom to take some courses from elsewhere, because no college will be, no university will be able to offer everything on earth. Therefore, credit transfer from different institutions will have to become a practice. As a matter of fact, as it's still a wishful thinking, I don't know. As you know, in National Board of Accreditation, we don't accredit institutions. We only accredit programs. I am thinking, will there be a time in future where I might have to be required to accredit courses that mathematics for this institution is good. Any student can take it and get credit in any other university. Maybe we come to that stage. And once we come to that state, why not a course from IIT, NPTEL? See, if it's an online, why in my college a child cannot opt a course from NPTEL or from SWAYAM? Now 40% is being permitted in SWAYAM, but why not anything of his choice? And going a step further, why not from Coursera? Why not from edX? We may have a right to evaluate those courses and approve those courses, but why should we having any right to deny those? Therefore, faculty will have to be on the toes all the time. I'm not threatening them or frightening them, but if they do not update, they will become irrelevant, because student will have so much choice outside. Therefore, if you don't deliver, he says, okay, if I have to take a course online, I don't care whether you give it or XYZ from MIT gives it. And therefore, that freedom will force our faculties. In a way, I use the word force, but I think it's a good sense. They will have to upgrade themselves technologically, content-wise and delivery-wise. Then only they will stay relevant, and that's a great challenge for the faculties which will come in. Faculties themselves will have to be more interdisciplinary in the knowledge domain. This very specialized, even very specialized PhDs is becoming out of place in all good industrial establishments abroad, because today industries do not hire a person on the basis of what or she knows, but they hire on the basis of what he or she is capable of knowing in future. Now, that's a great change in HR itself, because there's a requirement of the industry, and that has to be built in by our faculties right here. And therefore, faculty has a greater challenge now, and a greater background of becoming interdisciplinarity, more open to flexibility, more open to the fact that if the students don't like my course, they will take my colleague's course. Because they can do that. So probably many things are in the offing, but faculty has always been the backbone of any educational institution. I mean, I've never believed the buildings make an institution. Only faculties make an institution. Only thing is now faculties will have to reinvent themselves in the change scenario. Sooner they do, better will it be for the institution, for themselves, and for the which we are talking about.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Xavier, sir, please.
Yeah. I think, this is the perspective, that we have to understand. What Dr. Agarwal has mentioned, that what this NEP gives is that flexibility. Now, my only worry is the regulator should not come in the way and say that for 20 students, you should have one faculty, you must compulsorily have. Then what happens? You will end up recruiting all inferior people, and then you have to show according to statutory requirements, you will get into problems. What I foresee is, if it is properly implemented, the teachers actually, the good teachers will earn, 20 times more than what they are earning. The way it will happen is like this. As Agarwal sir said, if I am a good teacher, my courses will be taken by everybody. So depending on number of students who take my course, either online or face to face, I will get a share in the revenue. See, the models of compensation has to also change. Once you have this kind of a flexibility, there will be motivation for the faculty also to upgrade themselves. Then they will become specialists in certain areas, or throw up and develop some new course on artificial intelligence, something, and then they will make it popular. See, today, for example, when you go to Amazon to buy something, search for the product, so many products come, then you look at the reviews, and then based on that, you pick the product. Now, same way, a student, for example, in future will have the choice. He will go, I want this particular course, electromagnetism or whatever it is. He types that, and then all the teachers come, their ratings come. He chooses, whichever teacher he has the highest rating. So automatically, this will weed out the weaker teachers. And teaching profession itself will become a lot more fun, because you have a huge opportunity to upgrade yourself and make more money. But then all these are envisaged by the NEP writers. I always put this rider that if the regulators continue to actually put in a lot of blocks, there will be a problem. Like in the US, it's all market regulated. It is not regulated by the government. Now that problem will be there. So please keep this in mind. Whatever I'm saying has a rider. If we are given a free hand, yes, we have fantastic teachers who will rise up to that level. There will be a lot of teachers who will be axed, and we don't need so many teachers, because once you do online, a good teacher will be available for 1,000 students at a time. So you can reduce the number of teachers also. That's going to be the change.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Sangameshwara, sir.
Please. As I agree with most of the points, both Dr. Agarwal and Dr. Xavier has mentioned, I agree with the regulatory bodies. I have the experience earlier in the present situation, how the regulator bodies behave and do it. And I think they have given us a light and tight situation in the document. Earlier, it was not light, it was very strong and loose earlier, because there are too many rules. India, normally in our situation, in the country, we make lot of rules which are appreciated in the beginning. But as Professor Xavier mentioned, later you get into problems of quantifying everything, and you need so many teachers, so many square feet, all these should not come into picture. So that kind of attitude should change. And of course, the teachers are the backbone. We should focus only on the faculty development is our main aim to implement this kind of NEP 2020. Upgradation of teachers, and they should be interdisciplinary, because their mindset is always on a watertight compartment type. Always they will go only, you cannot, even within the department, they don't change the subjects and teach. These are all the serious problems which we face. All this will get eliminated in this kind of a situation. So I would agree with both the experts, what they saw. The IDP, institution development planning, is also one of the serious point. Every institution should take care and do accordingly, which should also include the faculty development.
Okay.
Thanks.
Then next question is, see, now that we make a 4-year degree with BCom, BCA, and even BSc Computer Science and BSc Computer Technology, then and many of the vice chancellors, even in Bharatiyar University, he's from technical education. And as we see in BSc Computer Science also, we have the same curriculum what we have in engineering degree. So how it will work out? So it's a great question for all of you. BSc Computer Science and BSc Computer Technology and BSc Data Analytics, all 4-year course. And we have BTech Data Science, BTech Computer Science and Engineering, same laboratory, same. So how to differentiate arts, science and engineering? So I put it across. Anybody can enlighten us.
See, I started that. Maybe I can answer that for you. See, this is precisely the today's problem. So, so you are saying I am an engineering college, so this is my subject, and I will not allow anybody else to come into this. And then somebody says this is medical, so I don't want anybody to come in. I think that boundaries will get broken now. So, now what you have to do is, as an engineering college, if you want to make your product or your degree better than the others, it depends on what kind of programs you give, what kind of industry interaction you give, what kind of placements you give, what kind of flexibility you give the student. Ultimately, you have to give personalized, customized education to every student according to his need. So if we have to build that, you have to become a multidisciplinary college. Everyone has to become a multidisciplinary unit. And there will be competition from everybody else. This is also similar to the one of the questions we raised, that if we allow foreign universities, what will happen to us? Of course, we have to fight. So in the 90s, when we allowed, for example, foreign companies to come and set up shop here, did we go down? We have improved our quality. We have actually now successfully, we are also competing with them. So competition is part of life. I think we need to live with that. All arts colleges will now start offering engineering related issues. All engineering colleges will have to take arts college issues. How do you differentiate? You have millions of ways in which you can differentiate. That is where actually your method of delivery, who are the faculty you're tied up with. Today, nobody is stopping you from tying up with some 5-6 US faculty and then they teach online. Now that's your selling point. Now we need to think very innovatively and then create a niche for ourselves.
Oh, thank you, sir. Anybody can add on to this? JP sir? JP sir?
Yeah, there will be a difference between arts and science, because now we tell people whether you do arts or science or engineering, medical, law, you have to learn technology. Without learning technology, nothing is going to be upgraded.
Everybody will learn.
Everybody has to learn. Even I was talking to one of the top HR manager. He said even we would like a history student to learn technology. So it's becoming a part of it. So, but where will differentiate engineering college, arts and science? The arts and science college has to now start investing more on technology, center of excellence and all this. Those will definitely survive and move up. So it's going to be competitive. Even if you stay, if you're not moving forward, it means that you're moving backward. That's what. So even engineering colleges already engineering colleges already started, but now there will be a race, like rightly said by JVS said, there will be a big competition to even engineering colleges. So corporates are not going to see whether you are engineering or science. If you have the skill, from knowledge based, now recruitment will be skill based. So rightly said by JVS sir, who is going to give skill? And the arts college student also can learn from online. And that's why this time UGC has really said notification. I don't know how far it's going to be implemented. A student who is going regular class can take one more degree through online or distant education. That's going to be a huge advantage. For example, this is going to be a huge advantage for engineering student. For an example, a student who is going to do data analytics, computer science data analytics, the statistics plays an important role. So he can take statistics as a in distant education, but this will not happen for a arts and science student. A BSc, suppose he's doing BSc statistics, he cannot take engineering as a online. It's not possible. So this is going to be advantage in that, but don't underestimate arts and science college. They can do much better. They have so many arts and science colleges in the city are really coping up with the technology. So it's going to be a stiff competition. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. So anybody want to add up on this, or shall we go to the next question? Yes, please. See, nowadays we are seeing Zogo University and Google has announced, Sundar Pichai has announced that Google career certification is more than enough. The students need not have a collegiate degree. So how do you see that as a positive note for the students of India? With the +2, if they take a certification in Google, they can start their job. And if they, after +2 or 10th, if they take up a skill course in Zogo University, they can become competitive to the engineering course or arts and science course. So Agarwal sir, can you say something on this?
Well, actually, it's nothing new. If you take yourself about 25 years back, many of the Delhi University students were attending their college during the forenoon, and in the afternoon, they used to go to a coaching for NIIT and so on and so forth, and get a GNIIT and get a job based on that, not based on the forenoon college. So the point is, if our universities and institutions sleep over the fact that what gets the student a better life, then these things will happen. And now we cannot sleep over it. I personally feel if Google certifications and things like that are also taken cognizance by the university and accepted as credits. For example, I can decide Google certificate 1 is worthy of 40 credits of my university. Things like that. So, I mean, I was talking to a very great group of industrialists the other day. I said, just as you industrialists try to monetize everything, we in the universities now will now have to creditize everything. If a student takes a course from anywhere, credits, give him credits. He does a training, he goes summer vacations USA, does a voluntary training, gives us proof, we give him credit. He makes a nice project at home, we give him credits. So unless we now start creditizing everything, and then only this problem will be solved, and interdisciplinary focus will have to come. You talked about Sundar Pichai. He is heading the best, largest computer company, and he's a metallurgical engineer. I don't know how many of you know. He's a metallurgical engineer. Probably metallurgy is one branch which is most distant away from computer science. And he is heading Google. So it's an example how the things are going to take shape. And we cannot stop anybody who will like to make his own way. And we will not be able to make way for somebody by our CGPA. 10 on 10 will not get a job if he doesn't have the knowledge. And when we come to the subjects like artificial intelligence, data science, engineering degree is not a prerequisite. Somebody can be very good in artificial intelligence without an engineering degree. And therefore, this elitist status we engineering colleges enjoy is under threat, because the new technologies really do not want a very strong base of engineering all the time, except for some who want to develop those applications. Today, AI is being used more by finance, more by doctors than by engineers. And therefore, we will have to, as I started, we will have to see ourselves as a service producing people for designing applications for agriculture, designing applications for health, designing applications for manufacturing. Then only we will stay relevant. And I think that challenge has to be taken more seriously than buzzwords. Questions have been raised about regulations. These questions have always been genuine. I will not like to comment on this because I'm a part of the system in some sense, although accreditation is different, but still, so how the things unfold will decide too many things. It's possible that we may not be able to take much of the advantages hidden in the policy if we don't do good implementation. And because implementation is the key, and according to me, flexibility and interdisciplinarity will have to go with the change in regulation, change in accreditation. Light and tight is a very beautiful phrase. How do we implement it as we go along? Only time will say, and let us all hope will contribute in the philosophy and take it forward. Thank you.
Just
Thank
one
you, thank you,
point.
thank you.
Just one
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Yes, please.
Just to add to what Dr. Agarwal said, you see, NEP itself allows higher education institutions to offer these certificates. There is a clause. I don't remember the. Yeah. So
Top
you
100
not only 1 year, you can offer certificates. It allows for that.
Yes.
So I think we could partner with them and start offering them, number one. As he said, we should also include in our credits, because now the curriculum allows that flexibility. So You do that certificate, I'll be equivalent to one course, two course. Then the next thing is, currently we are having placement at the end of the fourth year, at the end of third year or fourth year. So instead what you should do is make placement throughout the year. So at the end of first year also, if somebody gets placed, let him go. Second year, third year, they can leave, because this is the flexibility that NEP offers, that at the end of first year, you get a job, you get a certificate and go. Companies are wanting to reduce their cost of hiring. That is what they are looking at. So if a first year student is enough for him, they'll take him. That's a point. So it's all economy, economics. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you. And Sangameshwara, sir. Yeah. Yes, please.
See, the certification programs are already exist, as Dr. Agarwal ji mentioned. You see, for example, when the computer science is introduced long ago, CCNA, by chance, if somebody does a CCNA certificate, they used to get a job without any degree. So, and the only thing, the flexibility was not there with the institution earlier or currently. So that the NEP is going to provide all that. So it is very comfortable either to include as a creditization or something, as he told, or you can let him have the certification later also, no problem. So the flexibility is the answer for all our earlier questions in the current situation we have. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Sir, again to Sangameshwara, sir, our NEP has scrapped out the MPhil degree. Do you think the master's degree can go for PhD directly?
No, MPhil is one of the degree introduced in between earlier. Normally, we used to have a master's program and then a PhD program to help such make it more requirement because of the number requirement. This can be scrapped. There is no harm in that MPhil degree. Scrapping MPhil degree is no harm at all.
No harm at all. Okay. Yeah. Thank you, sir. Madam Gauri, madam, in times of financial crisis, will you think that vocational education being introduced now with high profile will be useful for the your Chamber of Commerce and financial institutions?
Just modify your questions in the perspective of student you're talking, or how is it?
Student education system, they have given a new regulation for vocational education now.
Correct. With the anytime they can vocational education they'll be taking, and that requires a hand holding from a existing industry or any other surviving. Then only the practical inputs will be there. That is the significance of this occasional. So occasional thing is they have to get attached, and you go to get a credit, and like an internship, an effective practical internship can be attached. It's like an attachment training, how these medicos undergo. Like that, it can be done. My point over here, what they were all talking about, this faculty thing and 2-3 other things, I just thought I could add on. This faculty development program is happening part and parcel even now. But how effective is that? If you could see the Finland model of faculty development, they dedicate 8 to 10 years for a faculty to be with them. In 3 counts as a social capital. They consider the investment made on the faculty is a social capital. Then the human capital is and a professional capital. So these scores they set it across and made it 10,000 hours over a period of 10 years, grooming the faculty. And so that speaks upon one-on-one in a very informal way. They'll be made to do. No, you choose whatever you want or not in that way. They may even everybody is adept in psychology, whether you are an engineering or that way the faculty development programs has to be oriented in such a way that a long-term relationship with the management and the faculty and the students. So this goes in such a way that the caring naturally happens when they are groomed in psychology. So that way the faculty development has to be there. Another thing, what they were talking about, the Zoho and Google, what you are talking about it. My recommendation to that is already partnering, accrediting, as Agarwal said, and as Xavier said, partnering with those institutions. Here, the standalone institute partnering with them will become another sub-commercial proposals, and the burden of the money and other things will go to them. You will be giving credit. Perfect. But the point over here is, this higher education regulatory council has got 4 verticals. Under that 4 vertical, one is regulatory, another one is standard setting, another one is accreditation, the fourth is funding. So we all as a group together, represented to the this HARC through the standard setting and accreditation. So we will, as a nation, they can just say Google ABC course. If you just take it off at this A level, B level, first year, secondary, you are already collecting the fees at your side, and there can be some modus operandi worked out in such a way that, like, part and parcel of the syllabus, this comes and you can allocate some 3 months, 6 months certification. It's not that the Google or Zoho at random, at the whims and fancy of the student, pick them and they go. There is an institution and the regulatory body or the national level, the MOU can be done. Already Google is going to do a lot of things for digital phenomena in our country. So in that case, this also can be channelized. We can give a representation. It becomes a streamlined one. Otherwise, what will happen? This college offers Google course, so let me go there. This college offers Zoho course, let me go join this course. That again create a competition between the colleges. So if a national body does this as a part of their accreditation wing, the vertical takes care of this, then it becomes quite easy.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody wants to add up on this? Yes, please. Sangameshwara, sir.
There are two things. One is she has told that we have to have a regulatory on the MOUs to be connected with the organizations like Google and other things. So then the flexibility is again defeated. So we have to have a flexibility, and it is to be allowed to the institution to take and to work as a competitive institution with other institutions. That is number one. The second one to the madam is regarding the finance. See, there are two problems which normally the institutions are facing. One is financing an institution itself. The second one is financing a student. How we go about, because there are general, what you call the governmental nationalized banks are available and all this, but there are a lot of difficulties. So how can we have a specific role of any bank or an organization for funding an institution and also funding the, because in an institution, I want to buy an extraordinary equipment which is available, which is very essential. If I don't have enough resources, I cannot go further. So there are difficulties. Bank will not permit sometimes to buy any equipment for an institution. So I need some kind of a mechanism should be made available for all institutions and also to the students. Then only we can have a comfortable, because funding is one of the major issue in our Indian education system. Please, madam.
Yeah, can I add something here?
Yeah, please.
Yes, please.
See, this the concept that we are talking is the student should be given the option, should be given the flexibility to choose what he wants. This is the basic idea. Now, it could be courses of our own, it could be courses offered by other institutions, or it could be outside organizations. So we offer that kind of a flexibility. Then we need to have some understanding. Like, for example, even vocational courses you want to start, you don't have to really have all the equipment, everything inside. So you tie up with the polytechnic. So that use their resources. They can go there and then do the course. So then, of course, there has to be a revenue sharing arrangement between the two. Now, in the West, for example, I have taught in US, UK, we had this flexibility always. The student who comes and studies MBA will go and do a course on philosophy. He will do something on printing technology, because it is allowed. 1/3 courses you can take anything. And within the, your department, you have to do certain number of courses. So there is always something called student advisement center. Every student comes there and then gets advice on what courses he could take. And then he pays fees only according to that. So there will be a revenue loss, for the institution. This is the other thing you are looking at it. But again, the NEP, the way it actually has visualized is that each institution will become a multidisciplinary institution. So that means there will be a consolidation. A number of small ones will merge with other bigger ones. And then every district, there will be a big multidisciplinary institute or a university. This is what actually is expected. And this is going, so naturally, each one of the smaller institutes, you will have to plan now. Do I want to grow and become a big one and then acquire all others and run it? Or will I merge with somebody and then run it? Or will I close down and go away? So these are the options available to smaller institutes. So there cannot be so many small institutes. As far as this funding question comes, the funds, again, each institution trying to buying an equipment is a criminal waste. We have to think in terms of sharing resources. There has to be consortium of institutions. So then the consortium can share and then have a resource. I have a resource, you have a resource. So within Coimbatore, you take so many institutes, you are replicating so many of the equipments. Why do you want to do that? And you should be able to share the resources and optimize and save on the cost. So use the flexibility given by NEP to optimize on your cost. So you have to become collaborative and work on that. That's a much better way rather than expecting government to support and fund us for every purchase.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Anyway, we have crossed 1 hour and 10 minutes now. And I think we have come to the conclusion part. And one question from Professor A.M. Nadarajan sir itself. I think, sir, Dr. A.M. Nadarajan sir, you can put across the question yourself.
No, we have been now working in isolation. You all know that engineering separately, law separately, medical separately. Now you say all of a sudden interdisciplinary, 1/3 course you can go for this, that, so many rules and regulations. Country like in India, when we are having so many different kind of institutions like ITA, diploma, degree, arts, so many things, how to go about in implementing all these things? What will happen the present professional institutions, the prestige of the professional institutions?
Of course, Agarwal Saab can answer that, but I can take it very easily because there will be chaos.
Yeah.
You cannot achieve anything without actually initial chaos. And there has to be reorganization, rearrangement. So it is what NEP envisages is a major surgery of the education system. And all these years we have not changed. Now actually it's an opportunity for us to change. And so it is a good way of looking at it. But at the same time, there will be casualties. There will be institutions which will fall by the wayside. There will be regrouping, reorganizing. So many things will have to happen if we have to achieve that. That is one part. But at the same time, sir's question on this issue of ITIs and other things, there is still an issue because this policy gives only targets for gross enrollment. In a way, it is little upper class bias is there. There are no targets set for example, vocationally trained people, no targets set for people coming from adult education scheme. Of course, there is a talk about national skill framework, and then once it comes, then everybody can be skilled, etc. But there are no targets set. So as of now, this policy is little pro upper middle class and upper class kind of a bias is there. It may not be, it's little more thought has to be done as to how we are going to deal with this ITIs, polytechnics, these kind of institutions. That will be a big loss. If you're going to close down all of them, substantial number of people are benefiting from that. I think that we cannot afford to really, close down. But at the same time, higher education needs tremendous surgery. We have really made a mess of it, and then we have made it some kind of a, machinery. You input students, and 4 years out, he is an engineer, but what does he know? There are problems. I think, we really have to change all that, and we have to make it more customized, individualized, and flexible learning for each of the students. That's my personal.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. And I hope that we have come to the end of the session. Let me conclude what we have discussed today. And I thank Professor Agarwal sir for being here and giving the great insights on Education 4.0. And he has said that it has to evolve because as he said, metropolitan cities and cosmopolitan city schools and colleges has evolved already. What about the rural? It's a big question. And then design the online education system. It needs a great investment on IT infrastructure by many of the schools and colleges, which has to be taken up very seriously. Credit transfer was a good discussion today, so it has to come up. And Agarwal sir has mentioned about, so content delivery is another subject. Agarwal sir has given an insight on this, and I thank Agarwal sir for being here and given a wonderful note on many of the points of NEP 2020. Next is JP sir, and you have pointed out that why shall we not have a ranking till 250? This we put across the table and the country, that the regulatories have to decide upon that. And the National Technology Portal is also another interesting point to note on this day, how to take it about, because AICTE has given already NEAT, which gives some of the industries to tie up with some advice to the colleges how to tie up with the industries. But this one is really an interesting point which you have given. And the learning ability of the children, that has to be taken care. Thank you, JP sir, for joining us today. And Sangameshwara sir has pointed out the autonomy, the real autonomy of the institution, then why that is where an institution can grow and evolve. And the public-private partnership and the request of support from government is very important, and that was mentioned by Sangameshwara sir. And what happens to our polytechnic education, whether it will be converted to an higher education or an university, is another brainstorming panel session we should have maybe later. And Xavier sir, that was a great question and answer session from you. Statutory bodies, what will happen to the regulation and the kiosk, all these things is a major problems which we have to face in the forthcoming days. But anyway, our Indian government has given 10 years to come to a complete holistic education, which we are going to see in our days. And flexibility options in credit transfer and choosing of subjects, and entry and exit point, certificate, diploma and degree. So all these things is there. And he has also given some points, and multilingual, and it's I think we should have a separate panel discussion on the 3 languages or 4 languages, and then that will be a kiosk now if you open that point in Tamil Nadu. Okay. And here in Gauri madam, one good thing you have pointed out is beyond internship what? That's a great question, because many of the students and the colleges, they say that they go for internship, they complete their internship to satisfy the norms of the institute or the university. But what happened with that internship? With that internship, whether they'll be able to solve the industry problems or they'll be able to understand the problem statements given by the industry is a big question mark. So that beyond internship is really a very worrisome cases for many of the colleges and the universities, because it has to be taken care of. So so it can be concluded that what NEP policy 2020 says, that engineering or medicine or whatever the professional courses may be, they can have arts, science, and whatever the subjects, maybe liberal arts can be introduced in the engineering colleges, and in the arts and science, technology can be introduced in arts and science colleges. So it goes hand in hand. So when the students come out of the colleges, they can be skilled in whatever they aim for or wish for. So this NEP policy 2020 is the first draft, and I hope that 12 o'clock PM is addressing on this also. So this discussion was so great, and I thank personally and on behalf of the management of KPR Institute of Engineering and Technology for your wonderful time with us. And this YouTube live will go throughout the globe, and every Indian is NRI or PCI or OCI, they are all waiting for this to happen for long years of 34 years. So I thank everyone for joining this panel discussion on higher education. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Natarajan sir.
Yeah, thank you.